Winamp's back. Let's party like it's 1999. All this and more on This Week in Retro.
High-resolution color graphics.
This land of high technology.
The revolution in technology that made the information age possible.
Those kids are not afraid of computers.
A new Winamp version, back to the 90s.
More FPS remasters on the way.
And completing your retro collection. All this and more on This Week in Retro.
Up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.
Welcome back from the UK. How is it like being back in Australia?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. It's always good to be home, and I count myself lucky because when I come back to the UK, that feels like coming home. But also, of course, you know, my life is very well established over here, so coming back to Perth is definitely coming home. Although today was my first day back at work as well, and let's just say jet lag kicks in after 3 days. Not a good night's sleep last night, so I'm gonna hit the pills tonight. That's my plan. Because at the moment, what's happening is I get to about 1 a.m, and my body goes, Nah, mate, I'm pretty sure it's the middle of the day and I'm just wide awake and there's no explanation. And then by about 3 o'clock in the morning, just when you're sort of resigning yourself to that, it goes, oh no, actually, you might be right. And then you're out and then you can't wake up in time for whatever you've got in the morning. Yeah.
When I used to go to Florida, I found the only way to do it was just to get back to work and just go through your normal day. Trying to go for a sleep in the afternoon was it just prolonged it.
No, that's right. Yeah. Although I'm a big fan of
Did everything fit in your case?
It did. Look, I don't know if you can see the mess behind me. This is genuinely a mess because better than messing up the bedroom is to mess up this room. And that's literally my case still waiting to be sorted. Although I've done the important things. So the clothes are still in the suitcase. The Spectrum games are on the shelf. The Amiga games are already pride of place. Shadow the
priorities
Beast is where it should be. Everything. The train set started to come out. But a really cool thing. So one of the things I did get was from Chrissy, which I'm still really pleased with. This CD32. I'm not going to move it because I have got a few issues with it. So Duncan can do his zoomy magic. All right, brought this back with me. This actually fell. So it was in my hand luggage bag. And I was in the queue at Heathrow, sitting on top of my suitcase, which was, horizontal because, not horizontal, vertical because the wheels were on the bottom. And my hand luggage bag fell off while I was in the queue. And so I heard a crack. Now, there's no physical damage that I can see, as in cosmetic, to the CD32. But it does have problems switching on every now and again. So hopefully, look, test for the listeners. Let's flick it on. It had been behaving this afternoon. Let's see. And this is all I do with it. I don't have any games, Dave. So all I do is I turn it on.
Tinkle.
And I listen to the tinkle. And obviously you can't see that, but I look at the logo and I go, oh, that's nice. And I switch it off again. But no, actually I do have, my mate Shane has lent me Simon the Sorcerer, so I'll get stuck into that. The talkie version.
Game as well.
Obviously, yeah. And he's lent me his power supply as well until I buy one. So, yeah, really pleased with that. So thanks, Chrissy, for selling me that at excellent mates rates. It's here, it's working, everything else is here. So back into the realities of real life in Australia. Yeah. Cool.
Are you going to end up converting that, not converting it, but adding a keyboard and so on to the CD32? Is it going to be your everyday Amiga?
No, I don't think so. It's a lovely machine to have, and it's a really exciting part of the Amiga history to investigate what was it like. And I couldn't ignore it at the price it was offered to me. But I've got the A1200, and that's already got an accelerator card in it and a compact flash card and everything. So really, I'll just use this for playing about with CD32 games as they were intended. That's my intention for that. So yeah, really cool thing to add to the collection. Yeah. Cool. Right. Shall we?
There is one thing I wanted to talk about. We had a thought that perhaps people are listening and watching who don't really know how this whole process works.
That's a good point.
The idea behind this show is that all of the things we discuss are submitted by you, the listeners. There is a subreddit, which is always linked on all of our all of the podcasts and on YouTube, which is This Week in Retro. And people go and submit stories to there. You can submit anything you want. And other people will go in and they will press the upvote arrow if they think it's something they'd like to talk about. And then once a week, the three of us Neil, who we'll come on to in a second, yourself and I will go and we'll pick a story each. Usually we'll go through and we'll see what people want us to talk about. We'll pick a story each and we'll talk about it. So if you want us to talk about something that's retro related, then go and submit it to the subreddit, or go and look at what's there and click the little up arrows and the things that you want us to talk about. We seem to go through periods where there's loads of submissions. Like 3 or 4 weeks ago, there was loads. And then this week, there wasn't quite so many. There was still enough good ones, but there was still not quite so many. So I'd encourage you to go and use the subreddit and see if you can influence what we have to discuss. I mentioned Neil, and he's not here this week. Neil has been working 7-day weeks. There is a lot going on behind the scenes. There's the new MMS stock coming out. There is the arcade being built up by Alex, the video when that's come out, so people should know about that now. This weekend he was taking off, and today it's Mrs. RMC, not Ms. MRC. It's her birthday today, so he's off today, so he's not here, but he will be back next week, and he'll be full of energy again, I'm sure.
Yeah. So happy birthday, Lily, I guess we should say as well.
Oh yeah, happy birthday, Lily. Yeah.
Happy birthday.
I don't think she watches it. Maybe she'll watch it now, though.
What do you mean? What? Actually, neither does my wife. But she will watch the segment where I was in the cave last week. So.
Daddy Mulk. Yeah, that was, people seem to enjoy that. That wasn't intentional. That wasn't. Oh, yeah, right, okay. Well, that was not intentional, and we did try to remain professional, but sometimes the teenager in her comes out.
I blame the viewers.
Shall we get started?
Let's do it.
More llama abuse. So Winamp has released a new version after apparently 4 years in development. It's 1997. You're connected to the internet with your 33.6k modem. You're hoping that no one picks up the phone, and you're trying not to think about how much the phone call will cost. Using MIRC, you're connected to a script bot, and you're downloading an MP3. It's Barbie Girl from Aqua. Or maybe it's Mbop from Hanson. Or maybe it was Tub Thumping from Chumbawamba. And I hope it wasn't I Believe I Can Fly from R. Kelly. Once you've got your files, you'll disconnect. And what will you use to play the MP3s? Well, Winamp, it really whips the llama's ass. Which was the little tagline you got when you opened it back in the day. I expect many, if not most of our viewers will already know what Winamp is, but let me remind you, and I'll hopefully give you a little bit of an insight into what it was. So Winamp was the sequel to a program called DOSAMP, which very few people have heard about. It's a bit of software that used the AMP library for MP3 playback, which I think was developed for Unix. I did use DOSAMP, not because I'm a hipster and I used all the old things, just because it was on a cover disc, I think. It played MP3s in DOS, and I don't think I saw the utility of playing MP3s in DOS. I think I just saw it was cool. It was a novelty. Fantastic. Look what you can do. You can compress a file down. You can get a real bit of music there. But in 1997, Winamp came out for Windows, and after a few initial versions, then by version 1 in 1997, it had the iconic title bar. It had most of the memorable features. So it had playlists. It had that graphical equalizer. Later versions had plugins. So you could stream from the internet, which meant you could get internet radio. And they changed from freeware to shareware. The plugins, though, were a big deal. There were thousands of them made. And the ones that I remember most are the visualizations. So Milk Drop for Winamp, for example, you can see all the patterns and so on the screen. But it could also have plugins to allow you to do things like play mod files, so that would please the Amiga fans. A big deal with it as well, there was a skin, so you can make minor changes to it, and that seemingly was enough for people to love it. I know skins aren't that big a deal these days, and it reminds me of changing the plastic cover on Nokia 3330s. But all that happened all in the space of 1997, so it moved really fast. More updates came in later years, but in 1997, Winamp went from kind of zero to hero. They did lose their way eventually. Winamp 3 was a complete rewrite, and it was incredibly unpopular. And they actually went back to the Winamp 2 code and added the features from Winamp 3 to Winamp 2 code, and then in an Atari Jaguar inspired idea, they called that version 5, because that's version 2 plus version 3. Now, Winamp was at the forefront of a revolution in the way that we consume music. When Winamp came out, we would start ripping our CDs, and by that I mean we would put the CD into the computer and turn it into MP3 tracks, which we could then play on the computer without the CD. And maybe around 4 or 5 years after Winamp appeared in 1997, portable media players, or what you and I call an MP3 player, they appeared. It was South Korean branded ones, and then of course the big beast, the iPod, and that changed everything again. And again, that meant music changed from having CDs to having ripped MP3s, but it also opened the door to file sharing and whole scale piracy, bigger than even back in the cassette tape days. People just stopped buying music. You didn't need the CDs. You went online, you downloaded them. But going back to Winamp, it was by far the most popular program for it in Windows. Did you use it, Chris? Do you have any memories of sorting out MP3 tags in your music library?
Oh, I have so many memories sparked by what you've just said as the opening to this story, Dave. First and foremost, actually, MIRC. In the days of dial-up, I didn't even think to download music. For some reason, I was busy downloading JPEGs. But anyway, yeah. So
what kind of JPEGs?
Just pictures, probably pictures of
art,
cars.
Cars?
Yeah, cars. Yeah, probably cars, I'm sure. Blurred memories, Dave. It's a long time ago. But yeah, it was go back to Winamp before I segue to a place we shouldn't go. It was Winamp was definitely the first MP3 player I used in a Windows environment. And I don't, tagging, you say, I don't remember doing that. I think you're assuming I'm a bit more organized than I actually am there. It was just, put them in and whatever. Yeah. But I do remember the software that I used specifically for converting my CDs to MP3s. It was a program called CDEX. I don't know if you remember that or used that one. Really easy program to use before they added the feature into Windows Media Player, which of course, you could then do later on. So I just used that. But I've actually still got a copy of that on one of my hard drives. It was just a free to download program. So yeah, really cool program for doing that. But, Winamp, the visualizations, I mean, it was almost hypnotic. You were listening to music, but you'd just sit there and there was one, there's sort of like a spiral tunnel thing. I can't remember what it was called, but you'd just be absorbed in it. It was like the opening to Doctor Who kind of thing, But of course it's, changing and bumping in time with the music. And you just stare at it for no apparent reason until suddenly you realize it's 2 a.m. and all the JPEGs are finished downloading. So, yeah, cool. What about yourself?
Yeah, I did have Winamp. I think everybody must have Winamp. It was so popular a program. It cracked the door open. I loved the visualizations, like you said. It was you could sit and stare at them. But I moved on to other things. I moved on to Fubar 2000, which was more powerful than Winamp, and it had better library support. It was just really an evolution, a step forward. And over the years, Winamp tried to get themselves into various different features, including library support, but it didn't quite catch for them. They got the initial thing right, and they couldn't seem to. They kept trying lots of different things to try and move forward and try and be the next big thing, but they couldn't quite do it. And they faded away, partly in the face of Fubar 2000 and VLC, but also in terms of iPods and then mobile phones, because we initially had a music on the computer, but very quickly we had an iPod, we had an MP3 player, we had, and then eventually we had, in the late 00s, we had mobile phones, which would carry it all. And then, of course, we had Spotify and others, which were a new revolution in music. So we had CDs, and then we had digital music, and then we had streaming. Yeah. And, of course, when Spotify and so on appeared, people stopped buying music or stopped buying music, stopped pirating it, and they just started streaming it instead, and they stopped owning it. Winamp was kind of left behind then. Now, what's happened now is that at the end of July, a new version was released, Winamp 5.9, RC1, release candidate 1, build 9,999. What a coincidence, eh? 9,999. Now, there's not a lot new. They've switched the version of Visual Basic, allowing them to, in the future, add more features. And they now, which I didn't like this, they now need Windows 7. So in my head, Winamp is a Windows 95 program, so it feels weird to cut out 95, 98, ME, 2K, XP, and Vista for a program to me that looks no different than what it did back in 1995. So a weird thing there. And yeah. So in the past couple of years, I bought a record player. It's an old Technics quartz lock automatic linear tracking one. I love it. It's great. And I love how disconnected I can be and not have to get my phone out to listen to music. My phone is the source of loads of notifications that demand my attention. And it's also the source of loads of procrastination and distraction. So it's great to disconnect from that music. And I was wondering, but I'm not convinced, if people might return to Winamp as a way to get back to basics and away from streaming, adverts, notifications, nagging, etc. I don't know. But the reason why I'm doubting it is that your computer is usually the source of all that, and having to use it for Winamp would then maybe introduce that problem. So I'm not sure if there'll be a resurgence in it. But I also sometimes think about the mild annoyances of vinyl. I wonder if I will go back to some kind of digital music while still enjoying the disconnection. So maybe, I don't know. There's problems with vinyl. I mean, the old records are fine, but the new Iron Maiden album, which is on 2 CDs, is on 3 records. So I'm having to change the records after 11 minutes of music. You have to turn it over, which is a bit excessive. Old records tend to be between 20 and 22 minutes, so you didn't have to do that. So I've kind of dismissed the idea, but I did think of what about having a little sticker inside the record, so I still need to get them out and read a code and type a code in and then get them to play digitally. But no, I'm not going to do that. It's not a good idea. But Chris, do you think you'll ever go back to Winamp? Does it have a place? Does it have a place these days? Is it anything?
Well, we've segued now from are we going to go back to Winamp to are we going back to vinyl, Dave? Because I picked these up whilst I was back in the UK as well. These are my originals from growing up, teenage years. So these are for those listening in. So these are picture discs. Yeah, picture disc singles. So I've got AC/DC Thunderstruck. Wonderful picture of,
Great song.
Yeah. With the lightning coming out of the top of the guitar and everything.
Are they Scottish or Australian?
Well, I have to say they're Australian. Otherwise, they'll actually deport me. That's the problem I have right now. And then Guns N' Roses yesterday. So a wonderful big stone angel in a gravestone on the surface of that 12-inch picture disc single. And then another AC/DC one, Money Talks, which looks like a 50p or a 50-cent coin. It depends on if it's Scottish, English, or Australian, I guess. The AC/DC statue in the middle. So yeah, picture discs formed my teenage years, fantastic. But I don't have a record player, Dave, so I'd be interested to see how you get on with that one and maybe some advice.
They're not too expensive. And
you can buy modern ones. How good they'd be, I don't know. We're getting off topic, aren't we? So let's.
Neil has one. He has one that does Bluetooth, and he said it's great. Mine's an old one. Mine's I think an 80s or 90s one. But yeah. Will we go back to Winamp though? Is there circumstances you can think you would go back to Winamp?
I don't know, and it's horrible because it's nice to see these old names come back. So you never want to quash them. So yes, this is a great thing, and we're all going to use it. In reality, for me, probably not, unless it does something that Windows Media Player doesn't. I'm now I've gone a bit default. I think we've discussed before in terms of Windows. Unless there's something that the package that comes with Windows doesn't do, I'm not going to add to the operating system anymore. Yeah, because then it stays clean and it operates, as intended. Hopefully, whereas the more extras you add to an operating system, obviously, the more you potentially clunk it up and slow things down. So if it added some features, or if it just adds some awesome visualizations that I simply can't resist, well, then maybe that'll be enough to pull me back. Who knows? Let's see what it looks like when it comes out. What about yourself?
I don't see it. I if I could possibly find a reason to justify it, I'd love to, because it's great using it. I just don't see it. I don't see myself going back to Winamp. I've got my mobile phone here, and it's got it's got all my music on it. It's got access to even more through YouTube Music and all the rest of it. And I've got my when I want to disconnect, I've got my vinyl records. So I don't see it. Even the television, I can click and get any music I want on that. I don't see where Winamp fits in anymore. So it's a bit of a shame. Because I'm really fond of it, but I don't see how it's gonna bash Spotify and Apple Music out the way. I don't see what would get people going back to it, but it is cool. It's not forgotten, and it's been updated. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope there's a whole new generation of people using it. It'd be great to see it, to hear about the llama again. But yeah, I don't think it's going to happen. I think its days are past, I'm afraid.
So, Dr. Local also dropped us a link to a story on metro.co.uk. Link will be in the show notes. And the story really is off the back of a tweet by the CEO of Night Dive Studios, Stephen Kick, teasing that they are working on more FPS remasters. So Night Dive Studios are responsible for the System Shock remake due to drop this year, as well as remakes of Quake, Doom 64, Blood, and Exhumed, so the story says. There's no real detail, and he's not actually he's actually just responding to a tweet by another user called Cathay Raytube, so cat and then Cathode Raytube, who is if you look at the Twitter, hover over the Twitter handle, is a self-described local hot girl. Just according to the Twitter account, I'm not making this up.
Hang on.
Yep.
Local to you or local to me?
Well, who knows? Local to whoever's looking at her account, I would hope.
And any connection to Dr. Local?
No idea. But anyway, that's what they are. And also the account suggests that you follow her for NSFW stuff. I've no idea what any of that means, Dave. Maybe you can explain when we're offline. But anyway, in Kat's post, she puts up a grid of 90s FPS games with the caption, "You can only pick one game from each row, 90 FPS edition." So obviously the idea is you choose, which game you'd like to keep from the collection. So it's this image to which Stephen Kick, who I assume is also following the local hot girl, by the way, responds with, "We've remastered 4 of these with a few more on the way." And that's it. This is no official announcement. This is literally just a tweet responding to a tweet. So first, Dave, I want to talk about the original post by Kat. It's a very simple image. It's a grid. And let's go row by row. What I want to do is...
Sure.
Obviously, her question was just which one would you pick to keep from each of the lines.
Yeah.
Some of these have obviously already been remastered or remade, and there is a difference between these two. So I just want to ask the question, which would you pick for a remake or a remaster?
From each row?
Yep, from each row. So we'll go row by row. We'll each pick one. So row 1 has Quake, Chasm, The Rift, Duke Nukem 3D, Marathon Infinity, and Alien Trilogy. What would be your pick, Dave?
Well, it can't be Quake because that's got source ports and so on, so it doesn't need it. Yeah, if we're picking one game, what's the best game from that row? Then obviously it's Quake. So it then comes which would you want to remake or remaster? Duke Nukem 3D has already been done. Yeah, Duke Nukem Forever. So it would have to be one of the other ones. I don't know the other ones very well. I know Alien Trilogy a little bit, so I would say that. I don't know Chasm the Rift at all.
I don't.
Sounds like a good name. It sounds like a Chasm the Rift. Sounds quite interesting, but I don't know. I guess Alien Trilogy. What about you?
I'd have to go that as well. Again, Duke Nukem 3D. It's also already been ported to modern systems, like there's the Duke Nukem 3D World Tour edition, so you can play that on modern systems. So yeah, just because I don't know the other two, I'd have to say Alien Trilogy. Okay, so moving on to row 2, it's Doom, Marathon, Rise of the Triad, Dark War, Half-Life, or Shadow Warrior. What would be your pick?
Well, it's not going to be Rise of the Triad or Shadow Warrior. Both of those are just a little bit janky feeling. They're just, I think they were funny at the time, but not so much. Doom, obviously not. We've got source ports for Doom. We've got Doom remakes. We don't need another one. So it's going to be Half-Life.
Yeah,
I'll tell you why. Half-Life has, environmental storytelling in Half-Life. And what I mean by that is you learn what's going on, and it's great, and that's what made Half-Life so good. So a remaster or some kind of way in Half-Life to bring it up to modern stuff so that people can enjoy that story. That's why. I'm guessing the same reasons for you. Is that right?
Yeah, totally. It's well overdue. Not a remake. I don't want a remake. I would like a remaster, maybe with RTX. That would be cool. That would be fantastic.
Yeah.
And again,
Yeah.
I hate if there's one thing I hate in modern games, it's cutscenes. And a well-designed game like Half-Life doesn't need cutscenes because the dialogue and the storytelling is in the levels that you progress through. It's fantastic. Although I personally was a fan of Shadow Warrior. Love it. And yeah, I would not shy away from re-releasing that today. So, row 3, GoldenEye, as in the original GoldenEye, Hexen, Quake 3 Arena, Unreal Tournament, or Redneck Rampage.
They're quite similar, those games. Quake 3 Arena, Unreal Tournament, and GoldenEye are multiplayer ones. They're the ones that people were fragging each other in. Hexen,
GoldenEye did have a good single player as well, though. But yeah,
did it? Okay.
Yeah,
I'm not too familiar with it. I know that everybody talks about playing GoldenEye as for the fragging. Redneck Rampage. I think it's going to be Hexen because I don't think enough has been done with Hexen, and I think it's interesting enough to do it.
Yeah, fair enough. Hexen, I'm tempted to go with Hexen as well, but I did love Unreal Tournament, and there have been recent iterations. I think 2004 is the last one I bought, where they added vehicles and stuff. Yeah. That was fantastic. But maybe we just go back to the original, but add again modern graphics, so a remaster rather than a remake. I think that could be quite nice. So I'll pick that. Yeah.
Do you not fear they would end up turning it into just another one of these battle royale games that are all the rage now, and they would just slap the IP on top of it?
That's why I would say a remaster rather than a remake. Yeah,
good point.
That would be my caveat. Yeah. Okay, row 4. Power Slave, Doom 64, Unreal. So we're talking about the original single-player game there. Mm-hmm. Blood or Quake 2?
Right away, it's down to either Power Slave or Blood. And it's going to be, I think it's going to be Power Slave, or Entombed as it was called. I think it was Entombed, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think
Entombed was the right name for it. Yeah. Because Power Slave's an Iron Maiden album. I think that was the problem.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
Power Slave was an Egyptian themed Iron Maiden album as well. I've got the vinyl in a room, and it's too close. I think that's the problem. Yeah. Power Slave, I like Egyptian stuff, so I like the theme of that. I'm looking forward to play that. I've not played it. Mm-hmm. I've got a copy of it somewhere. To play. So I'd be interested in that one, or Blood, because Blood's such a good game. Doom 64, Quake 2, we've got enough of those going on, and Unreal. Was Unreal that good a game, was it? Is it up there with Blood and Power Slave? Is it?
Well, Unreal would be my pick. Unreal would be my pick, because it was a good game. It was one of those games that just took your breath away, both in terms of the scenery and the soundscaping. It was that sort of time where, the more devs sort of threw in that hadn't been done by other people, the more you noticed it, whereas these days we're sort of spoiled because everything's been done. You would literally just, stop and go, especially once you'd added a 3D FX card to your PC, you go, oh, wait, that surface is casting a reflection, or when I fire this gun down a wall, I can see the light change along the wall because of the lightning bolt or whatever you're firing. But also, again, a good progressive storytelling, no cutscenes that I can remember. The levels and the progression told the story, and you started off in a cell on a slave ship or a prison ship, that had crashed. And you sort of had to escape your cell, go through some corridors, and then you found yourself on this completely alien planet. Fantastic opening to a game. Absolutely loved it. Some of the best scenes in terms of lighting effects. So there's one place where you walk down this corridor and then suddenly all the lights start flicking off down the corridor, and of course the darkness encroaches on where you're standing, and then you get attacked by this creature that's throwing everything at you. And I
don't think I've seen this.
Poorly armed.
This is.
Oh, it's fantastic.
I thought I played it. I obviously haven't.
Man, it's an amazing game. So yeah, to see again, I would want a remaster, not a remake. Just give me that, but we with modern effects and high res graphics and high poly models. That would be amazing to go through that experience again. Yeah. Cool. All right, let's move on. So row 5, Dark Forces, So a Star Wars game there. Doom 2, Marathon 2 Durandal, Heretic, or Wolfenstein 3D?
Well, Dark Forces. Dark Forces, because the whole Star Wars vibe going on in it is fantastic. That's a game again that could be, they could enhance the storytelling in it. But Doom 2, again, there's so many. Doom's been done so many times. We don't need more Doom.
Yeah,
there's plenty of it around, and I'm not saying anything wrong with Doom. Wolfenstein 3D. Yeah, it's been done. It's a fairly basic game, and does it really hold up, or was it just because it was such a step forward that in Catacombs 3D was such a step forward? Does it really hold up, or did they get? I don't know. Heretic, maybe my second choice. I don't know Marathon 2 at all.
I don't know any of the Marathon games. Yeah. No, never heard of them.
Yeah. But Dark Forces, definitely. Dark Forces.
Yeah, that would be good to bring that up to modern spec and go through that again. Is it a first-person shooter? It's Star Wars. I mean, it can't go wrong. So what are your opinions, Dave, just out of interest, on remakes versus remasters? You know, what do you think has more
I have
place?
opinions.
Yeah, you have opinions?
I have opinions.
Go for it.
I have opinions.
Open floor to Dave.
Yes. Here I go on my soapbox. I am happy with remasters and source ports. They're great. There's a few big deals that way, and the earliest I can think of, I'm sure it's not the earliest, but earliest I can think of is Exalt, which is for Ultima 7. And it's a new game engine that uses the original game files.
Nice.
Now, Ultima 7 was, like all the Ultima games when they came out, they were pushing the boundaries of what the hardware could do. And Ultima 7 didn't age well as far as compatibility. Very quickly, even in the Pentium era, Ultima 7 didn't play properly. So that's one of the reasons why Exalt came out. So it's an engine that uses the original game files, and you can play Ultima 7 in it with a few enhancements, better resolution and so on. It's great. Another way of doing it is in the way of some of the older role-playing games, because they didn't have the same creature comforts that we do now. So they didn't perhaps have auto-mapping. You couldn't see all of the character stats all the time. The screen was much smaller. So there are sort of bolt-ons that you can get through DOSBox. So when you're playing old games, they will, around the DOSBox window, you'll get another little window on top with character stats, another window to the right of it with a map on it. And I'd like to be a purist. I'd like to play the games with none of that help, and I'd like to get the graph paper out and so on.
Yeah.
But who's got the time these days? So for the old Goldbox games, there's something called Goldbox Companion. And for Eye of the Beholder, there is the All-Seeing Eye. And with those, they enhance it. So it's not quite a remaster, but it's that kind of idea.
Yeah.
And then there's some recent ones which are tremendous in the X-Wing franchise. So the first one was X-Wing Alliance Upgrade, XWAU, and then there's X-Wing Virtual Machine, XWVM.
Yeah.
And both of these, you've seen them?
Yeah, I have, yeah.
They're great.
Yeah.
They're great. I mean, they're absolutely tremendous. Some of them have AR, so you can, I'm watching a guy streaming it, and things are changing as he moves his head.
Nice.
It's great. So again, they use the old data files, and they're effectively a mod. Now, I don't know about the legal side of things. I'm only imagining here. I'm not an expert at all. But I think if you just remake an old game yourself, that just stands alone, then you're in a much shakier legal footing than if you make effectively what's a mod for a game that requires the original game. Presumably the publisher would be happy with that, because the original game's on sale somewhere, so people then buy the original game to play this mod. So presumably that's better, but I don't know. But yeah, those are great. And funny enough, I watched a video last night from a channel I've not heard of before. YouTube suggested it, Timberwolf Stuff, and it's about Sierra and LucasArts remasters. And it talked about how they've been remastering things pretty much since year dot. CGA to EGA, EGA to VGA, the old Sierra games, the LucasArts games. So we've always had, the point of the video was, the takeaway was, there's always been remasters, and they're definitely not a new thing. So it is a great video to watch. I'll ask Duncan to link it. But going back to FPS, there's loads of source ports in that genre, and that's a great way of playing the old games properly, but in modern hardware with maybe some of the sharp edges taken off, like Doom and Quake and so on. They were made in an era where the source was kept, and it's been released, and it's been open sourced, and people can make little enhancements to it. So that means it opens the door for better multiplayer access and so on, and better ways. So that's a good way to do it. But I'll now come on to reboots. This is where my opinions are. I'm not a fan of reboots. I'm not a fan of remakes or reboots. I think in these modern cynical times, what they do is they just churn out another cookie cutter game in Unreal, CryEngine, or Unity, whatever. They make all the standard received wisdom mechanics about Battle Royale and crafting and gems and buying this and little things and play 100 times to get a one little improvement here. And then what they do is they just slap on a well-loved, old, popular IP, they slap it on top, and they call that a remake of it. And it's not a remake. It's just your generic modern game with old IP on it. And that's why I don't like reboots and remakes. And I appreciate that. It doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way, but it often is.
Yeah, totally agree. And they add cutscenes, Dave, and I hate cutscenes. I don't want a cutscene. Yeah. Just want to play the game.
I don't mind cutscenes in themselves, but they're often used badly. And even modern role-playing games, you're traveling from one cutscene to another.
Yes.
You're following an arrow.
Yeah.
You do this to get the next cutscene, and then you get to the cutscene, and you're clicking through the cutscene.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me about it. Yeah. No, we definitely agree there. All right, cool. So there you go. I think we've made good on that. I mean, at the end of the day, we started with a story about a tweet in reply to a tweet. What a time to be alive. I mean, that is modern journalism at its finest. I think we've actually peaked. So in next week's show, we'll have a car chase and a story about a puppy. Check it out on the subreddit.
Completing your retro collection. Also shared by Dr. Local. So that's 3 for 3 this week, Dr. Local. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, seriously.
It's a bit of a left field submission, but when I watched the video, I was knocked down. I couldn't ignore it. It's a video by a channel I've not watched, and it's a console channel called Retrobird. So it's outside of my usual interests. I don't mind consoles, but I don't know enough about them, so I tend to find that videos about consoles tend to fly over my head. And I didn't expect to stick through the whole video. I thought, well, it's been submitted. I'll watch it for a couple of minutes and see what I think. And I sat and watched the whole video all the way through. It's almost performance art. It's a 12-minute long, full-on, breathless monologue. It's nothing like an LGR or an RMC video. It's not nice, calm pacing. It hammers the points out in a staccato beat. It talks about collecting, and here's a few of the things that I noted down that he said that I thought were important, were interesting. And he talks about how tempting it is to start collecting a new thing, and he says, could I be a Virtual Boy person? Owning one is ironic yet playful. And he's talking about the justifications that you do in your head to start, well, what have I got into this? And he talks about a phrase that we often hear, which is, I have all the games I want. And he then says, maybe we're trying to convince ourselves, maybe that's why we say it out loud, trying to convince ourselves to stop doing it. And he then talks about buying a game to finish a collection, but can be like trying to put out a fire by throwing logs on it, because it then opens the door to say, well, I've got this, and then I now get this and that one.
It's so true.
It rings so many bells. And he did say something that really hit home for me. He said, as much as there can be fun had in acquiring new games, it does take the focus away from playing what we already have. And there might be a part of you that just wants to be done collecting so that you can put all your focus on playing games. And that's where I am right now. I've been spending so much time dealing with not just games collecting, but also hardware collecting and getting things set up. I've been overwhelmed by dealing with the hardware, and I'm just ready to get things sorted out so that I can pick up a hardware project when I want to pick up a hardware project, but not feel compelled to deal with all these before I can sit down and play games. I don't play enough games. I want to get back to playing games, but I find that sometimes you can just be overwhelmed by what the other things that you have to do before you do it. Did you watch the video?
Yeah, I did actually.
Did you get a chance?
I did get a chance, and I did watch it pretty much all the way through. Such a great video, awesome humor, while telling the truth, basically. And the truth is, it's never finished. And yep, I subbed straight away because I love his stuff from the start of this video, and I took a quick look at his other content as well. Yeah, on the topic of collecting and whether or not it's finished, and how do you get distracted? I mean, my collection's parameters are fairly straightforward and they're achievable, and that is, I just want to re-own the stuff that I owned growing up. I mean, how hard can that be, Dave? This is the thing. It does get a bit tricky because if I want to own a game, I want it to be the same same cover. So if it was the budget release, I actually want the budget release, not the full price one. I want it to match the box art that I remember seeing on my shelf at home, or I remember picking up in the shop and paying my pocket money for. But if that's the case, Dave, why do I now also have... Let's start off with I now have all the modern Spectrum games currently available to buy by Zoysia in from over in Russia, because I got stuck into that and they're good games, so I've bought all of those. I've got several other Spectrum and Amiga games that I never owned but wanted, so that again the justification is in your head. Oh, my mates had that and I always played it or borrowed it, so I might as well own that for myself now that I've got the pocket money, if you want to put it that way. Why do I have a C64? Okay, I won that in a raffle. There's the justification. But now it needs games, Dave. It needs games. What's this CD32 doing on the desk? I didn't own one. I didn't even really know it existed back in the day. And now here it is because somebody offered me one at a good price. And what am I going to do with that? Well, I'm going to be buying more games, aren't I? And they're not easy to get hold of. So it really is a slippery slope. And my clear-cut and easy goal has segued into areas of, I call them areas of curiosity. And that has happened way faster than it should have. So, my original parameter still stands, and one day that will be complete. But then new parameters will kick in. I've already got one game from the Astra pack for the Amiga. Well, now I need to collect all 10. Of course, I have to. I can't just have one there. All the Codemasters tapes for the Spectrum. I mean, how many can there be, Dave?
Don't go down that one. Don't go down that one.
So what about yourself? Yours is complete. So yeah, unpack that.
Yeah, well, my collection is complete because my shelves are full. I have no more room. So that has to be it. If I'm buying something now, I have to understand that something else will have to come off the shelf. So I already have crates of games that I need to sell on eBay because I don't have room for my shelves, and if I don't have room for it, I'm not keeping it. So I perhaps once I've sold those crates of games, I'll say, well, I don't really like that game and I want that one. I don't know, but I have to draw a line because it's turning into, it's not a means to an end. Collecting so that I can play the games better is not. It's turned into collecting for collecting itself, and it's turned into stopping me play the games, particularly the hardware side of things. I've got so many projects ongoing. The ones I've been doing recently is on. I've got 5 different PCs. I have a 386. I have a Pentium. I have a Pentium 3. I have a Core 2 Duo, and I have an X6, a 6-core Windows 7 AMD thing. And there's a purpose for all of those. I wanted to cover all the 386 will do 286 and newer games. The Pentium will do 386 DX and onwards. The Pentium 3 will do Windows 98 stuff. The Core 2 Duo will do Windows XP, and the Windows 7 6-core thing is for things like source ports and remasters, so that I can play, like for example, the enhanced version of Planescape Torment. I can play that on a CRT as if it's back in the original. So I've got all those, and they've all got a purpose, but it's taken me so much time to get it all set up. And I don't, if I didn't have it done already, I don't know if I would recommend doing it, because it's got in the way. And funny enough, I look at his other videos, and there was quite a few thoughts he explores that are quite interesting. And I will look through his other videos as well, I'm sure. But he talks about how being an adult can suck, and how when we do get time to play video games, we sit and feel guilty about taking the time to do it.
Oh, yeah.
And that's definitely me. There's so many things I could do with work and the house and family and friends and so on. If I sit down to play a video game, then I can find I'm sitting there going, should I be doing this? Should I be doing this? And instead, what I'll do is I'll go and I'll go on Reddit, or I'll go on the news sites, and I'll browse through those, and I'll waste time instead of taking the time to do things I really want to do. And I've spoken to other people about this in the past, and it's really common. Everybody's got it. Everybody seems to have this problem.
I can attest to that.
It's why I like going to the cinema. I go to the cinema, and for 2 hours, I can't do anything but watch the film, and that really helps. But in the house, if I sit down to watch a film in the house, maybe I'll go and put the washing machine on. Maybe I'll go and do this. Maybe I'll go and do that. So I'll be watching the rest of these videos. But do give it a watch. It's linked by producer Duncan. There's lots of funny things in the video as well. There's loads of visual jokes in it, and it doesn't take a breath. It's just non-stop for 12 minutes. It's a great little video.
So, time for community question of the week. And last week's question was, what is that dream peripheral that remained out of reach? Which computer or console add-on did you want so badly but never had, but would love to own now? That was the actual question, not the ones that Dave tried to throw in as alternatives. And Duncan's actually thrown in his, which is, I always wanted a GVP 530 for my A500, but they were silly money. Absolutely. With you there, Duncan. So I think the top answer is from Richard Shears. Do you want to give us that one, Dave?
Sure. So it's from Richard Shears, and he says, for me, it would be the GVP HD 8 Plus Amiga A500 sidecar hard drive add-on with 8 megabytes memory built in.
Yes.
It was so unreachable for me that by the time I was able to consider it, my interest in the A500 was waning, and I put the money towards a 486 PC instead. The joy of installing NASCAR onto the hard drive and just running it without the delay of floppies was the stuff of dreams, until I found the SVGA mode that brought tears to my pockets, as the next thing I wanted was a creative 3D Blaster accelerator card. Thankfully, the 486 came with a 16-bit Sound Blaster Vibra, allowing me not to miss a beat when listening to Daddy Mulk. I thought we were going to do this without laughing. Don't start. If you start laughing, I'll start laughing. Until my eyes, whilst watering, stumbled across a review of the AWE 32, and so the endless march continued. Now,
nice.
I like it. I like the Amigas. I've got an Amiga that I need to build up, but I love the sidecars. I love peripherals and expansions and so on. So I really like the look of those. So yeah, I agree with Richard there.
The GVPs, they were the Commodore ones looked like bricks, and then this third party GVP came out that just followed the lines of the A500. How hard can that be? You know, Commodore didn't manage it. Yeah, nice. Cool. And I believe some of them had accelerators in as well. But anyway, moving on. Okay. So the next answer is from Grey Limit. All I aspired to was an actual hard disk for my 1040 ST. There we go. This one's for you, Dave. But basically being poor meant that I never got there. I always ended up using half the memory as a RAM disk for all the tools I used, so that a single floppy only contained the work itself, avoiding the need to shuffle disks in and out. This would have been from late 1986. Can you attest to that, Dave?
Well, I can say a little bit about that. So the ST hard disks were sort of like a pizza box shape that would sit underneath the monitor. So they were quite different. Again, they look great, and I wanted one, unaffordable. But what a lot of ST owners did was what he's talked about. You would get a Marpet expansion, and Marpet was the name of the people that made these, and they would go inside your ST, they would go inside the PLCC socket, you would force it down, take a chip off, stick it under that, so they would be, in a similar way, you've seen that thing, I think, on Amigas, and they would upgrade your memory to 2.5 megabytes usually.
Nice.
You could go as high as 4 on ST, but usually 2.5, and that 2.5 meant that you could get a huge, big, beefy RAM disk in there.
Nice.
So what you would do is you would load the stuff onto the RAM disk, and then you would not quite have a hard disk, but you would have a lot of the benefit of it. So yeah, that was a thing. But yeah, I wanted that, but it was out of reach. And again, just like what Richard said, by the time you could afford to do this, you're thinking, do I want to throw money at the ST when it's clear the writing's on the wall? Yeah. And for Richard, it was the Amiga. Do I want to put money there, or should I put it aside for the PC? I'm glad I did. I'm glad I didn't get the hard disk for the ST.
Yeah.
Now, the last one is from STFM. No surprise what computer he likes. I got a paper round to save up to $300 for a hard drive for my 520 ST, and by the time I had saved the money, they were obsolete. Yeah, that's exactly what we've said. Yeah. By the time the hard disk for the ST, by the time you got one, it was maybe best spent elsewhere.
Yeah. Right. Thank you so much for your submissions. And as Dave said at the beginning of the show, obviously, we really do live off your submissions for both stories and your responses to the questions that always do keep coming. So, yeah, great to see the engagement there. This week's question of the week, Dave, I reckon it should be about remakes and remasters. What do you think?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, let's set the question carefully. Let's not ask people what their favourite game is for remaster. Let's ask people what game would really benefit from a remaster, not a remake, not a reboot, a remaster. What game do they think could be taken, remastered, brought into a new generation, let people play that haven't played it before? What could be remastered that would let people really enjoy it? So what's your answer to that? And Duncan will turn that into English.
Fantastic. That is the question. And any system, any genre, doesn't matter. I think that's a great question. Yeah. So let us know in the subreddit.
So not just from the FPSs that we're talking about, but by all means, pick an FPS. So thank you very much for listening, and we will see you next week, where it should be all three of us. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
This Week in Retro was presented by Neil from RMC The Cave, Chris from 005 AGIMA, and Dave. It was produced by me, Duncan Styles. The podcast version of the show is available through your favourite podcaster, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and the video version is available on the This Week in Retro YouTube channel.
Join our community subreddit at r/thisweekinretro to suggest and vote on the stories we cover on the show. If you watch This Week in Retro on YouTube, please give us a like and subscribe to help us reach new viewers.
If you enjoy our show and would like to support it, then please check out the link to our Patreon page in the show notes or description. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time for more up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.